Atmanirbhar Bharat is actually the way out to make India a military industrial complex. Not only that, it is also the prime mantra to make India a big global giant or a big global economy. Prime Minister Modi's vision is actually hurdled by the entrenched system which does not want to let go of its own powers. The private sector here wants to get in, but the private sector also wants India to buy the equipment that it manufactures. For that, the defense procurement rules have to be changed. India requires high-tech equipment which will take us into the future. And that is what Prime Minister Modi's vision is. To have technology that brings us at par with countries like US and China. The instability of the world is such currently that India cannot rely on a third country to provide equipment when the red flag goes up. India cannot be a huge global power like US or China if it does not really increase in manufacturing, not only in military but also in civilian sector. Prime Minister Modi for him has been really at it to ensure that people understand his vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and why it is important for the country. Namaskar. Today we are actually going to discuss Atmanirbhar Bharat and why Prime Minister Narendra Modi is so adamant on getting Atmanirbhar Bharat as the anchor to growth of India as the third world largest economy. If you look at Atmanirbhar Bharat, this campaign was launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on May 12th, 2020. It's now virtually been 4 years and the results have been quite good. If you look at the civil sector, you will see that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi's PLI scheme is working very well and there is an investment outlay of nearly about $2 billion and already PLI worth about 4,500 crores has been paid to companies in 14 sectors. Similarly, Atmanirbhar Bharat has also worked very well in the defense sector. Let me tell you, in 2013-14, during the Congress UPA regime, the Indian exports were mere 686 crores. Today they stand at 16,000 crores, which is 23 times the amount which was in 2013. Now, what has happened in all this is that you will see that India is now exporting to more than 45 countries defense equipment, and India is also making defense equipment with new technology within the country itself. So, Atmanirbhar Bharat is actually the way out to make India a military industrial complex. Not only that, it is also the prime mantra to make India a big global giant or a big global economy. Now, if we look specifically at defense, Prime Minister Modi has been able to push the defense manufacturing in a big way in India. So, you see now Tata's making C-295 aircrafts, you see Boeing making equipment, you see engines being manufactured in India. And you actually see that India actually is now currently exporting like BrahMos missiles, like offshore patrol vessels, like warships, and the future lies in exporting submarines, exporting big warships or surface combatants, and maybe later exporting Tejas aircraft in big numbers. Right now there are orders, but the numbers have to grow and the manufacturing has to grow. Now, when you look at defense manufacturing, what has happened is that Prime Minister Modi's vision is actually hurdled by the entrenched system which does not want to let go of its own powers. Now, in case of Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense, to make Atmanirbhar Bharat successful, the private sector has to join in defense manufacturing. Now, the problem here lies is with entrenched departments like DRDO. Now, DRDO does not want to let go of its own powers. It wants to manufacture virtually everything, despite its core competence being missiles and in other strategic equipment. Now, the problem here is that the private sector here wants to get in, but the private sector also wants India to buy the equipment that it manufactures. For that, the defense procurement rules have to be changed. Now, understand something. If suppose X company wants to bring in technology in India with an Indian IP, I am insisting on an Indian IP, with an Indian IP, but I need to sell it to India before I start to sell it to the world. Because the first question that I will face is, why isn't India buying in the very first place? So, for that, the rules have to be changed. And the bureaucracy has to change its mindset. The private sector is willing to come in key areas like stand-off weapons. It's coming in key areas like aircrafts, drones, anti-drone systems. But it is for the defense ministry, it is for the armed forces, it is for the DRDO to get their acts together. They have to synergize their what they want actually. So, you have actually three people talking in three different places and in three different ways. They have to synergize as to what do they want and then ask the private sector or the public sector to produce it for them. What you see right now is that India is exporting a lot of equipment, but this equipment is not, apart from BrahMos missiles or helicopters, this equipment is not really a very, very high-tech equipment. I mean, if you're looking at artillery guns and all. So, for that, what you need is high-tech equipment. And India requires high-tech equipment which will take us into the future. And that is what Prime Minister Modi's vision is. To have technology that brings us at par with countries like US and China. Now, for that, we have to manufacture critical equipment like aircraft engines. We have to have rocket motors. We have to have fighter aircraft. Now, in all that area, we need to get the private sector synchronized with the public sector or with the vision of India to produce these things within India. Let me tell you, if you look at the top 6-7 economies, majority of them, except China, know how to manufacture an aircraft engine. India is still working on it, China is still working on it, but China is very, very close. So, it is for India to join hands with somebody like, Safran of France or somebody like GE and negotiate and take decisions fast so that, the technology is available when the country is on the high growth path. The instability of the world is such currently that India cannot rely on a third country to provide equipment when the red flag goes up. Right now, India virtually imports nearly 65% or 60% of its equipment from Russia. Russia is in a war mode with Ukraine for now nearly 2 years. India is looking at equipment systems from Israel. Israel is in war in Gaza. So, you have to have your own military industrial complex developed before the world recognizes you as a global power. And that is what Prime Minister has been talking about. But it is for the entrenched bureaucracy, it is for the military civilian bureaucracy to get its act together. Otherwise, this will not work. Let me tell you very clearly, the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat came way back in 1962 when Nehru lost the China war. But it's been talked about, it's been discussed in Parliament umpteen number of times, but never it has been implemented. Now it is the time to implement. Atmanirbhar Bharat also is the fundamental to the strategic autonomy that India wants and India always has relied upon. India wants to be a power like France, which has its own vision of the world, which has its own idea of the world. It does not have to go into pro-China, pro-US, pro-Russia mode. It has to be in a pro-India mode. And for that, it has to manufacture equipment within the country itself. I mean, there is no point in being actually pro-India or having strategic autonomy when you don't even have the wherewithal. For instance, if you look at the Indian Air Force, what you have right now is you have the French Rafale, you have the Russian Sukhoi 30, again you have the Mirage 2000. So, till such time you have a made in India product which is much more advanced than the current Tejas product. And let me tell you, even the Tejas Mark II, if the decision making is not fast, will take another 10 years to do. So, for India to be strategically autonomous not only in the Indo-Pacific but globally, India has to make products on its own.
Comprehensive national power of a state is anchored in its manufacturing capability. And that is why Narendra Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat is the key to India becoming a global power.
While we are talking about defense, let me also tell you that in civil also, what has happened is that the manufacturing has gone up. The purchasing managers index is right now at 56, which is much higher than 50 required. The manufacturing has gone up, the PLI scheme is working. But the point over here is that the Indian private player, the Indian private industrialist is not willing to put money within India. A classic example of this is that currently the trade deficit with China is still more than $100 billion. Last year it was about 104, now it has gone down a little bit, but it is still $100 billion, which means that people are actually importing and selling in India. So here the fundamental problem is that here it is the private sector that needs to get up and get its acts together. It is the private sector that has to start manufacturing, believing in India itself. And for that, the bureaucratic corruption must go down in states. For that, the private player does not have to pay from commissioner to constable to get his industry together. Now, as far as the private player goes, he doesn't also have to short circuit the system by giving bakshish all over the place. So, in all this, the ease of business comes in, and the ease of business has to really go up before Indian private sector starts to deliver in manufacturing. The fundamental point in all this is that India cannot be a huge global power like US or China if it does not really increase in manufacturing, not only in military, but also in civilian sector. India has to be autonomous. India has to be on its own feet. And that is the vision of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which he intends to achieve if he returns back for the third term till 2029. Prime Minister Modi, for him, has been really at it to ensure that people understand his vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and why it is important for the country. He has been making it very clear and very evident to both the private sector as well as the government sector that things cannot go on the way they are going. He has made it clear to the DRDO, he has made it clear to the Defense Ministry, he has made it clear to the armed forces. He cannot have, people asking for toys, like, and I want to buy this, I want to buy that, I want to buy this from the third country. All he's saying is nothing is going to be bought from outside, make it in India. Similarly, it's telling the private sector, he's telling everybody that start making in India. Because only when you make in India will people start to believe that you are a credible power. And it's only then that you will actually be recognized, or only then you will realize, only then the world will understand that why you need to sit on the high table.